Welcome to the Daily News Currents. Today is Tuesday, March 11th, and for today's headlines we have: Arrest of pro-Palestinian protester shows escalation in Trump deportation efforts. Trump's call to scrap horrible chip program spreads panic. Fraternity member charged with manslaughter and hazing death of university student. 2 Texas lottery wins prompt investigation and stir public outrage. The quest for AI scientific superintelligence. The ambitious startup embodies new optimism that artificial intelligence can turbocharge scientific discovery. Arrest of pro-Palestinian protester shows escalation in Trump deportation efforts. Mahmoud Khalil, a recent graduate student at Columbia University and green card holder, was arrested by Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers over the weekend in what is likely one of the first high-profile detentions of a student who participated in a protest against the Israel-Hamas war. The arrest follows through on one of Trump's executive actions, which directed the government to use all of its tools to punish those who have engaged in anti-Semitic harassment and violence. The executive action cites this federal law that authorized deporting a foreign national who endorses or espouses terrorist activity. The move is an escalation in Trump's effort to decrease deportations from the U.S. and strip protections from those who violate the new administration's priorities. In a social media post on Monday, Trump said the arrest was the first of many to come. He vowed that his administration will find, apprehend, and deport these terrorist sympathizers from our country, never to return again. Michael Thaddeus, a mathematics professor at Columbia University, said the move seeking to strip Khalil's green card and deport him violates the broader trust from foreign students who come to study in the U.S. They come because of their trust and belief that they could speak out freely while they're here and not be imprisoned or harassed because of their political speech or activism or advocacy, Thaddeus said. Khalil was one of the pro-Palestinian students who negotiated on behalf of the campus protesters who pressed Columbia to divest from Israel over its war with Hamas in Gaza. Amy Greer, Khalil's attorney, told NPR that ICE officers arrested Khalil at the lobby of his university-owned apartment. First, they told Khalil, who is Palestinian descent, that the student visa had been canceled. But he's not on a visa. He's a legal permanent resident. His wife went to get his green card from their apartment, but officers said his lawful permanent residency had been revoked. I demanded to see a warrant or have a warrant shown to me or Mr. Khalil before they removed him, and the agent hung up the phone on me, Greer said. Mr. Khalil was under the impression that as a lawful permanent resident that he had some modicum of protection that may not exist for people who do have student visas or who are undocumented. His wife, a U.S. citizen, later discovered he had been transferred to a detention facility in Louisiana, Greer said. Government has burden to prove deportation. Green cards, as known as lawful permanent residency, allow people to live, work, and travel in the U.S. as a U.S. citizen would. They can be revoked by an immigration judge for various reasons, including fraud in the application process or for criminal activity. If I have a permanent resident in removal proceedings, most of the time it's because of criminal activity, said Kelly Stump, president of the American Immigration's Lawyer Association, adding that when placed in immigration proceedings, only an immigration judge can revoke the green card. The government bears the burden of proving the reason that this person is deportable from the United States, and then just depending on what ground we're looking at, that's where the fight ensues. DHS spokeswoman Tricia McLaughlin said Khalil had been arrested in support of Trump's executive order on anti-Semitism, and that Khalil had led activities aligned to Hamas and a designated terrorist organization. Separately, on a post on X, Secretary of State Marco Rubio linked to a story about Khalil's arrest and wrote the administration would be revoking the visas or green cards of Hamas supporters so that they can be deported. We will vigorously be pursuing Mahmoud's rights in court and will continue our efforts to right this terrible, inexcusable, and calculated wrong committed against him, Greer said in a later statement. Several groups planned rallies and gatherings around Manhattan on Monday to protest of Khalil's arrest. Thaddeus, the professor, said the campus community was surprised ICE's first target was someone with a green card, rather than someone without legal status, calling it horrifying and a bit unexpected. It means that the strategy of the immigration police has gone in an unexpected direction, he said. Columbia University said it has seen reports of ICE officers around campus, and the university has and will continue to follow the law. Consistent with our longstanding practice and the practice of cities and institutions throughout the country, law enforcement must have a judicial warrant to enter non-public university areas, including university buildings, it said in a statement on Sunday. Trump builds on first-term efforts to strip status. During Trump's first term, he took steps towards limiting visas for foreign nationals and revoking people's immigration status, including denaturalization, or canceling someone's status as a naturalized U.S. citizen. Towards the end of his term, Trump's Justice Department created a section within the Immigration Office to focus on denaturalization. The New York Times reported at the time that about 40% of the 228 denaturalization cases the DOJ had ever filed were brought during Trump's 4 years in office. USCIS also launched a task force to review whether people may have lied about during their immigration application proceedings in order to get citizenship. But immigration law experts have said that the number of people who might lie on forms is very small compared to the millions of people who are naturalized or receive green cards each year. Trump's call to scrap horrible chip program spreads panic. The president's attack on the key tenet of the Biden administration's industrial policy has set off concerns that he may claw back its funding. As President Trump addressed Congress last week, he veered off script to attack a sensitive topic, the CHIPS Act, a bipartisan law aimed at making the United States less reliant on Asia for semiconductors. Republican lawmakers have sought and received reassurances over the past few months that the Trump administration would support the program Congress created, but halfway through Mr. Trump's remarks, he called the law a horrible, horrible thing. "You should get rid of the CHIP Act," he told Speaker Mike Johnson as the lawmakers applauded. The CHIPS program was one of the few things to unite much of Washington in recent years, as lawmakers on both sides of the aisle worked with private companies to draft a bill that would funnel $50 billion to rebuild the U.S. semiconductor industry, which makes the financial technology used to power cars, computers, and coffee makers. After President Joseph R. Biden Jr. signed it into law in 2022, companies found sites in Arizona, New York, and Ohio to construct new factories. The Commerce Department vetted those plans and began to dole out billions of dollars in grants. Now Mr. Trump is threatening to upend years of work. Chip company executives, worried that the funding could be clawed back, are calling lawmakers to ask what wiggle room the administration has to terminate signed contracts, said 8 people familiar with the request. After the speech, Senator Todd Young, the Indiana Republican who championed CHIPS, said he reached out to the White House to seek clarity about Mr. Trump's attack because the criticism was in tension with the administration's previous support. "If it needs to transform into a different model over a year of time, I'm certainly supportive of that," Mr. Young said last week. "But let's be clear, the CHIPS and Science Act, at least the CHIPS portion, has mostly been implemented. It has been one of the greatest successes of our time." The United States pioneered the semiconductor industry, designing the first microchips, and the process for making them allowed it to become an early tech leader. But in the 1980s, companies began outsourcing most production to Asia. U.S. lawmakers began pushing to rebuild domestic chip production after the pandemic created a global chip shortage that forced some U.S. auto factories to shutter, resulting in the CHIPS Act. But the Trump administration has already taken steps to whittle away at the program. In late February, Michael Grimes, a senior official at the Department of Commerce and former investment banker at Morgan Stanley, conducted brief interviews with employees of the CHIPS program office, which oversees the grants. In interactions some described it as demeaning, Mr. Grimes asked employees to justify their intellect by providing test results from the SAT or an IQ test, said 4 people familiar with the evaluations. Some were asked to do math problems, like calculate the value of 4 to the 4th power or long division. Last week, the Commerce Department laid off 40 of the CHIPS office employees, nearly a third of the entire team, these people said. The administration has also begun discussing changes to projects that receive chip-related subsidies, according to 3 people familiar with the internal conversations. The Biden administration gave preferential treatment for recipients that hired unionized construction workers and provided child care for employees, guidelines that could be changed, the people said. The reviews and layoffs were previously reported by Reuters and CNBC. On Tuesday, the day after Trump's speech, the Semiconductor Industry Association organized a call with member companies, said 3 people familiar with the discussion. During the call, people chalked up Mr. Trump's frustration with the law to personal animus with Mr. Biden. Some said that Mr. Trump's criticism could create challenges by drawing public attention to their projects, according to the people, but many also expressed confidence that their legal agreements with the Commerce Department couldn't be changed. The Semiconductor Industry Association declined to comment. So far, the Commerce Department has signed contracts to grant more than $36 billion in federal subsidies under the CHIPS Act. Samsung, Intel, Micron, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company known as TSMC, and others in response have pledged to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in U.S. chip-making factories. Mr. Trump has proposed replacing those incentives with tariffs that increase the cost of making chips overseas. On Tuesday, he said that the threat of tariffs have compelled TSMC, the world's biggest maker of advanced semiconductors, to increase its U.S. investment by $100 billion and double the number of plants it is building in Arizona to 6. We don't have to give them money, Mr. Trump said. We just want to protect our businesses and our people, and they will come because they won't have to pay tariffs if they build in America. It's unclear how much of a factor tariffs played in TSMC's plans. The company had already acquired land and drafted plans to expand its footprint in Arizona once it had the customers to support 3 additional plants, said 3 people familiar with the CHIPS Act. TSMC is investing earlier than previously planned, partly because customers like Apple and Nvidia committed to buying more US-made chips, the people added. TSMC and Intel declined to comment. Micron and Samsung didn't respond to requests for comment. Lawyers and industry executives have said that tariffs on chips themselves are not very effective because the United States imports few chips directly. Chips are typically sent directly to electronic factories, generally in Asia, where they are placed in laptops, cell phones, and appliances before being imported into the United States. Some of the chips industry have been formulating plans to try to convince Mr. Trump of the law's value since the election, including at the industry's annual gathering in San Jose, California in November. The initial legislation was spurred partly by a request from officials during the first Trump administration that TSMC invest in the United States, which kickstarted an effort from Congress to secure funding for the company. That soon snowballed into a broader effort to fund the industry as other companies and lawmakers wanted to participate. We need to go and make sure that our colleagues in Washington remember that, embrace that, and continue to invest in our incredible industries, said Deirdre Hanford, the chief executive of NatCast, a nonprofit created by CHIPS to oversee semiconductor technology development. The risk of losing funding has caused some industry executives to complain that the government was too slow to provide subsidies in the first place. While the law went into place in August 2022, the Biden administration spent months carefully vetting each project. Most of its largest grants were completed after the election. Is it perfect? No, said Senator Mark Warner, a Virginia Democrat, during a Washington Tech and Policy Conference last week. But without it, there would not have been another fabrication facility built in America. Fraternity member charged with manslaughter and hazing death of university student. Investigators say that Caleb Wilson, 20, a student in Southern University of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, collapsed after being hit with boxing gloves as part of a pledging ritual for Omega Psi Phi. The police in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, on Friday announced the first of a series of expected arrests in the fraternity hazing death of Caleb Wilson, a 20-year-old Southern University student who they said was repeatedly punched with boxing gloves at a warehouse last week, was unresponsive when he was dropped off at an emergency room. Caleb McCrae, 23, a member of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity, was charged with manslaughter and felony criminal hazing, according to court records. The authorities said at a news conference on Friday that 2 other suspects could be arrested. Mr. McCrae was identified by witnesses as the person who punched Mr. Wilson, the arrest warrant affidavit said. He turned himself into the authorities on Thursday and was booked into East Baton Rouge Parish Prison, the police said. The people who brought Mr. Wilson to Baton Rouge General Medical Center told employees on the night of his death that he had collapsed from being struck in the chest while playing basketball before they fled the hospital, the authorities said. But investigators said that they had learned that was not true. As part of a hazing ritual for Beta Sigma chapter of Omega Psi Phi, Mr. Wilson and several other pledges were lined up and hit 4 times each with boxing gloves in their chest, the authorities said. The repeated blows caused him to collapse on the floor and suffer what appeared to be a seizure, according to an arrest warrant affidavit. Caleb Wilson died as a direct result of a hazing incident where he was punched in the chest multiple times while pledging to Omega Psi Phi fraternity, Thomas S. Morris Jr., the Baton Rouge police chief, said at a news conference. On Thursday, the university, a historically black institution, ordered the fraternity chapter to cease all activities and suspended pledging for all Greek organizations for the rest of the academic year. The university will continue to fully and actively cooperate with law enforcement as the case moves forward, Dennis J. Shields, the president of Southern University System, said during the joint briefing on the case. The fraternity could face civil penalties under a Louisiana anti-hazing law. Dallas Thompson, a representative for Omega Psi Phi, said in a statement on Friday that the organization was saddened by the tragic situation at Southern University. It was committed to cooperating with and supporting all ongoing investigations to uncover the truth. If convicted of manslaughter, Mr. McCrae could face up to 40 years in prison. Hazing can rise to a felony charge in Louisiana under the Max Gruver Act, which was named after a Louisiana State University student who died of alcohol poisoning as part of a fraternity ritual in 2017. It can result in a prison sentence of up to 5 years in cases of bodily harm, death, or if a victim's blood alcohol level is 30% or higher, which is more than 3 times the legal limit to operate a motor vehicle. In a statement, Philip M. Robinson, a lawyer for Mr. McCrae, urged the public not to prejudge his client. At this time, I have not been presented with any evidence to support such serious accusations, he said. I maintain my client's innocence and urge the public to withhold rushing to judgment until all the evidence is heard. None of the evidence collected suggested that Mr. McCrae had intended to cause death or bodily harm to any of the pledges, the arrest warrant affidavit said. Investigators said that Mr. Wilson and other pledges wore gray sweatsuits during the hazing ritual, but that his clothes were changed before he was driven to the hospital in the passenger seat of a Dodge Challenger that was seen in security camera footage. At no time did anyone call 911, Chief Morris said. The death of Mr. Wilson, a junior who was studying engineering and a member of the university's Human Jukebox marching band, has drawn an outpouring of grief and tributes. I encourage all the young people out there to make better decisions, said Edwards, the Baton Rouge mayor, said at a news conference. We've got to do better, Baton Rouge. Two Texas lottery wins prompt investigations and stirred public outrage. One jackpot winner spent $25 million on nearly every possible number combination, while another bought tickets through a third-party app. The unusual circumstances surrounding two of the largest lottery jackpots in Texas history have touched off a furious debate about the unorthodox methods used to snag the prizes and have led the governor and attorney general to announce investigations. On April 22, 2023, someone won a $95 million Lotto Texas jackpot by spending $25 million to buy nearly every possible number combination in the draw. The winner, identified only as a business entity called Rook Texas of Scotch Plains, New Jersey, ended up claiming the lump sum payment of $57,804 before taxes. Then on February 17th, someone won an $83.5 million Lotto Texas jackpot by ordering tickets online through Jackpocket, a third-party app owned by DraftKings. Jackpocket also owned the store in Austin that printed the winning ticket. It sold board games in front and had dozens of lottery terminals behind a wall in the back. Can you buy millions of lottery combinations? In early 2023, as the jackpot in Lotto Texas ballooned over months without a winner, someone figured out a way to almost guarantee a win, according to Ryan Mindel, executive director of the Texas Lottery Commission. In the run-up to the drawing, the person or persons, it is not clear how many were involved, worked with 4 retailers in Texas to order a significant number of lottery terminals, enough to pump out roughly $25 million tickets and cover nearly every possible number combination, Mr. Mindel said. Then, in the 3 days leading up to the draw, people went to the stores and entered millions of number combinations using QR codes that had been loaded onto iPads, Mr. Mindel said. The Texas Lottery app allows customers to generate QR codes that can be scanned at participating retailers to generate tickets. The operation caused a giant spike in sales, with about 27 million tickets sold in less than 72 hours, compared to about 2 million in a typical Lotto Texas drawing, Mr. Mindel said. I remember waking up that Thursday morning and seeing the sales numbers and thinking, what the hell is happening, he said. One of the tickets contained the winning combination, 3, 5, 18, 29, 30, 52, for the $95 million jackpot, the third largest in Lotto Texas history. Officials have not disclosed who was behind Rook Texas, the entity that claimed the prize. Texas law allows those who claim lottery prizes of $1 million or more to remain anonymous. The operation, which the Houston Chronicle has helped to expose through extensive investigative reporting, touched off outrage at a hearing in the state Senate last month. This is probably the greatest fraud ever perpetrated on the state of Texas by any group, Senator Paul Betancourt said at the hearing. We gave up, probably on a fraudulent win, $57.7 million. Mr. Mindel said that the lottery had taken steps to thwart similar bulk buying operations by limiting the number of terminals that retailers could order in a short period and capping the number of tickets each terminal can print per drawing. Generally speaking, if one person had a lot of money and wanted to buy as many tickets as they wanted, that doesn't violate the law, he said. But he added, the perception of the fairness of the games is significantly hurt. A quiet store with dozens of lottery terminals. On February 17th, a buyer won an $83.5 million jackpot, also one of the largest in Lotto Texas history, using Jackpocket. The buyer was a Texas customer who had ordered 10 entries for the draw, spending a total of $20 according to Jackpocket. The app is one of a number of third-party companies known as courier services, which allow customers to order online without physically entering a store. A day after the win, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick released a video of his visit to Winner's Corner in Austin, the store that had sold the winning ticket through Jackpocket. He was not pleased with what he saw. He noted that the store, which was also owned by Jackpocket, kept a large number of lottery terminals in the back, hidden from public view. In addition to lottery tickets, the store appeared to sell mostly board games, he said. We're not suggesting anything illegal, but this is not the way the lottery was designed to operate, Mr. Patrick said in the video. It was designed to operate by someone coming into a store, giving someone cash and getting a ticket back, not for machines behind walls, and not for a courier service and retailer all being connected. The store, a licensed lottery retailer, has for years been the top-selling lottery retailer in Texas, Mr. Mindel said. Texas officials say both wins have shaken public confidence in the lottery. On February 24th, Governor Greg Abbott of Texas ordered state law enforcement officials to investigate both wins. Texans must be able to trust our state's lottery system and know that the lottery is conducted with integrity and lawfully, he said. That same day, the Texas Lottery announced that it was moving to ban courier services like Jackpocket and would revoke the license of any lottery retailer that worked with one. 2 days later, Attorney General Ken Paxton announced his own investigation into what he called suspicious and potentially illegal lottery winnings. Texas citizens deserve far better than bad actors getting rich off of a lottery system that is open to exploitation, and we will hold anyone who engages in illegal activity accountable, he said. Peter Sullivan, a senior vice president of lottery at DraftKings, said in a statement that Jackpocket would suspend operations in accordance with Texas lottery policy, but he noted that the app had operated in Texas since 2019, the proven track record of a compliance and commitment to responsible gaming, and had complied with guidance from the Texas Lottery Commission. He said that the company hoped to work with policymakers to craft rules that would allow courier services to resume operations. Jackpocket, he said, had driven over $550 million in lottery ticket sales in Texas, helping to generate vital revenue for public education. The quest for AI, scientific superintelligence. An ambitious startup embodies new optimism that artificial intelligence can turbocharge scientific discovery. Across the spectrum of uses for artificial intelligence, one stands out. The big, inspiring AI opportunity on the horizon, experts agree, lies in accelerating and transforming scientific discovery and development. Fed by vast troves of scientific data, AI promises to generate new drugs to combat disease, new agriculture to feed the world's population, and new materials to unlock green energy, all in a tiny fraction of time of traditional research. Technology companies like Microsoft and Google are making AI tools for science and collaborating with partners in fields like drug discovery, and the Nobel Prize in Chemistry last year went to scientists using AI to predict and create proteins. This month, Lila Sciences went public with its own ambitions to revolutionize science through AI. The startup, which is based in Cambridge, Massachusetts, had worked in secret for 2 years to build scientific superintelligence to solve humankind's greatest challenges. Relying on an experienced team of scientists and $200 million in initial funding, Lila has been developing an AI program trained on published and experimental data, as well as the scientific processes and reasoning. The startup then lets the AI software run experiments in automated physical labs with a few scientists to assist. Already, in projects demonstrating the technology, Lila's AI has generated novel antibodies to fight disease and developed new materials for capturing carbon from the atmosphere. Lila turned those experiments into physical results in its lab within months, a process that would likely take years with conventional research. Experiments like Lila's have convinced many scientists that AI will soon make the hypothesis experiment test cycle faster than ever before. In some cases, AI could even exceed the human imagination with inventions, turbocharging progress. AI will power the next revolution of this most valuable thing humans ever stumbled across, the scientific method, said Geoffrey von Maltzahn, Lila's chief executive, who has a PhD in biomedical engineering and medical physics from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The push to reinvent the scientific discovery process builds on the power of generative AI, which burst into public awareness with the introduction of OpenAI's ChatGPT just over 2 years ago. The new technology is trained on data across the internet and can answer questions, write reports, and compose email with human-like fluency. The new breed of AI set off a commercial arms race and seemingly limitless spending by tech companies including OpenAI, Microsoft, and Google. Lila had taken a science-focused approach to training its generative AI, feeding it research papers, documented experiences, and data from its fast-growing life science and material science lab. That, the Lila team believes, will give the technology both depth in science and wide-ranging abilities, mirroring the way chatbots can write poetry and computer code. Still, Lila and any company working to crack scientific superintelligence will face major challenges, scientists say. While AI is already revolutionizing certain fields, including drug discovery, it's unclear whether technology is just a powerful tool or it's on the path of matching or surpassing all human abilities. Since Lila had been operating in secret, outside scientists have not been able to evaluate its work, and they add early progress in science does not guarantee success, as unforeseen obstacles often surface later. More power to them if they can do it, said David Baker, a biochemist and director at the Institute of Protein Design at the University of Washington. It seems beyond anything I'm familiar with in scientific discovery. Dr. Baker, who shared the Nobel Prize in Chemistry last year, said he viewed AI as more of a tool. Lila was conceived inside Flagship Pioneering, an investor in and prolific creator of biotechnology companies, including the COVID-19 vaccine maker Moderna. Flagship conducts scientific research focusing on where breakthroughs are likely within a few years and could prove commercially valuable, said Nobar Afian, Flagship's founder and chief executive. So not only do we care about the idea, we care about the timeliness of the idea, Dr. Afanya said. Lila resulted from a merger of two early AI company projects at Flagship, one focused on new materials and the other on biology. The two groups were trying to solve similar problems and recruit the same people, so they combined forces, said Molly Gibson, a computational biologist and a Lila co-founder. The Lila team has completed 5 projects to demonstrate the abilities of its AI, a powerful version of one of growing number of sophisticated assistants known as agents. In each case, scientists, who typically have no specialty in the subject matter, typed in a request for what they wanted the AI program to accomplish. After refining the request, the scientists, working with AI as a partner, ran experiments and tested the results, again and again, steadily homing in on the desired target. One of those projects found a new catalyst for green hydrogen production, which involves using electricity to split water into hydrogen and oxygen. The AI was instructed that the catalyst had to be abundant or easy to produce, unlike iridium, the current commercial standard. With AI's help, the two scientists found a novel catalyst in 4 months, a process that typically might take years. The success helped persuade John Giorgi, a prominent researcher in new materials for clean energy, to leave the California Institute of Technology last year to join Lila as the head of physical sciences research. George Church, a Harvard geneticist known for his pioneering research in genome sequencing and DNA synthesis, who has co-founded dozens of companies, also joined recently as Lila's chief scientist. I think science is a really good topic for AI, Dr. Church said. Science is focused on specific fields of knowledge where truth and accuracy can be tested and measured, he added. That makes AI in science less prone to the errant and erroneous answers, known as hallucinations, sometimes created by chatbots. The early projects are still a long way from market-ready products. Lila will now work with partners to commercialize the ideas emerging from its lab. Lila is expanding its lab space in a 6th-floor flagship building in Cambridge alongside the Charles River. Over the next 2 years, Lila says it plans to move into a separate building, add tens of thousands of square feet of lab space and open offices in San Francisco and London. On a recent day, trays carrying 96 wells of DNA samples rode on magnetic tracks, shifting directions quickly for delivery to different lab stations, depending partly on what the AI suggested. The technology appeared to improvise as it executed experimental steps in pursuit of novel proteins, gene editors, or metabolic pathways. In another part of the lab, scientists monitored high-tech machines used to create, measure, and analyze custom nanoparticles of new materials. The activity on the lab floor was guided by a collaboration of white-coated scientists, automated equipment, and unseen software. Every measurement, every experiment, every incremental success and failure was captured digitally and fed into Lila's AI, so it continuously learns, gets smarter, and does more on its own. Our goal is to give AI access to run the scientific method, to come up with new ideas, and actually go into the lab and test those ideas, Dr. Gibson said. And that is all that we have for today. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye!